We're live.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the final co-op podcast of 2018. I'm your host, Richard Bailey Jr., and today I'm joined by Mr. Gary Ace Wavy. How's it going, Gary?
I'm doing very good, thanks. It's almost Christmas, so I've been getting in the mood. Almost my birthday as well, because it's the same day. But yeah,
Uh-oh.
I'm just getting in the spirit, I guess.
So I would like to wish you early, happy 21st birthday, Gary. So now
Oh,
you can do everything.
21st, yeah, I'll take that. 21st.
Yeah, absolutely. We're also joined by Mr. Jake James Lugo. How's it going, Mr. Lugo?
I'm doing good, guys. Glad to be back. It's been a pretty crazy ride over the last couple of weeks and stuff, and we're ending off the year hopefully with a bang. So it should be pretty good.
Absolutely. I agree. And we are joined by Mr. Tony Polanco. How's it going, Mr. Polanco?
It's going good. And you know how it is, man. Always happy to be on with you guys. And we're going to be doing the best and worst of 2018. So this should be a really fun podcast, you know?
Absolutely. Yes. Definitely going to be some interesting discussions because I have no idea what you guys' picks are for best and worst. So we're going to get into that. Before we do that, very quickly, I guess we're going to mention what we have been playing. So, Tony, would you like to go first?
Yeah. And Richie, I know you played this too. I was playing the Spider-Man DLC, Silver Lining. Really good
yes.
DLC, and it's kind of like the end of the DLC trilogy. I think it's called the City That Never Sleeps. I kind of like the fact that all three of the story DLCs kind of connect to each other, and I like the way they're released, once a month, like a comic book, which is pretty cool. And I also kind of appreciate how it sets up Spider-Man 2 or whatever the sequel is going to be called. I really liked it. It was a lot of fun. I will say that the screwball challenges are still the bane of my existence, though. Those things are a pain in the ass, man. But yeah,
I agree.
Yeah. I played that, and then about last week I finished Just Cause 4. That was a really good game too. I kind of liked it a little more than Just Cause 3, even though structurally they're very much the same. Like, I know this game has some new tools, but to be honest, I never even used them, and I completed the entire game. But if you like, I call it a true sandbox game where you're just given tools to just do whatever you want. This is definitely a game to check out. But yeah, that's what I've been playing lately.
That sounds good. Yes. I do have something to say about that Spider-Man DLC, but I'll get into that when I talk about what I've been playing. How about you, Mr. Lugo? What have you been playing?
I've been playing a lot. There's been a bunch of different games all over the place that I've been messing around with and diving into here and there. Obviously, one of my more recent reviews, I did the Last Revenant Remastered. That's up now on the website. I had a couple of good things to say about the game, but I just don't think that game is translated well as far as gameplay wise. Granted, it's an older game. It's from PlayStation 3 era stuff, but it still looks pretty good overall. Besides that, I've obviously been playing Super Smash Bros. Ultimate on Nintendo Switch. I think pretty much everybody at some point has been playing that game. Had a lot to say about that as well. That review is on the website now. And again, I just been playing it, streaming it when I can, playing with friends, locally. Been really enjoying that. I'm probably going to be playing that some more over the Christmas holiday because I know I got some family coming over and they love Nintendo and they love Super Smash Bros. So that should be a lot of fun. And then finally, probably what's probably going to be my last review of the year is going to be for a game called Gris that I'm actually playing now. I've been hearing a lot about Gris and I've been messing around with it, little pieces here and there when I can. And it's a pretty good artsy, very, very visually pleasing game. Like a lot of people are really kind of comparing it to something like Journey or something kind of like, was it? I think it was Abzu. It's really chill, very visually beautiful game. So can't wait to kind of dive more into that and talk about it with everybody else.
That sounds good. I've heard a lot of great things about that game, so definitely have to check it out and check out your review for sure. All right. So how about you, Gary? How about you let us know what you've been playing besides Overwatch? Because I already know you're going to say that you've been playing Overwatch.
Oh, besides Overwatch? Okay. Let me think. Nah. Yeah, I've been playing Spider-Man. Because I got that later than everyone else, and I've finally been diving into it now. I can see how the exploration gets very addictive because when you're swinging around the buildings and everything, you're picking up a lot of missions. They follow that kind of Ubisoft structure where, you know, you go to the towers and then you scan the area, and then, you know, you find more missions and collectibles and things like that. So sometimes I just, you know, my whole gaming session just revolves around swinging around the city and, you know, stopping crimes and getting collectibles and stuff. I think there's something very therapeutic in just doing that. You know, and sometimes I don't have the concentration to do more than that because I'm tired or I'm doing other things as well. So doing that is quite, you know, fun in itself, just swinging around. And I love New York City as well. So, you know, seeing the landmarks and everything is cool. I went up to the Empire State Building and everything, the Chrysler Building. And I was quite surprised to see the Avengers Tower. And I want to see if that actually comes into play, like in the story or anything. I'm still very early in. The last mission I did was the one where you kind of take control of Mary Jane. So, you know, that was cool having that different perspective on things. But yeah, I'm not that far into it, but I am enjoying it more than I was last week when I spoke about it. So that's good. And besides that, yeah, Overwatch. So that's pretty much all I've been playing this week.
That sounds good. Yeah. Glad to hear that you're starting to enjoy Spider-Man a little bit more. So awesome. And as for me, as was mentioned earlier by Tony, the only thing that I have been playing, I did finish the Spider-Man DLC. I agree that, I like how they ended the chapter because I know that second chapter, it felt a little bit shorter to me, but still, the conclusion was fantastic. They answered a couple of questions, and then they also left some things, left to explore in the next title. I'm pretty confident in saying there definitely will be another Spider-Man PS4 game. There's no doubt about that. Although I will say, and we will get into this later, I do believe that the way that they showed the final after credits trailer, that is something that might annoy Gary. And I'll come back to that later so that you understand the context, because it's setting up something. And I know Gary is not a fan of stuff that is set up but not fully explored, so I'll address that later. But still, great game, fantastic game. And as for the controversy regarding the suits, I didn't understand any of that because I thought the game was fantastic. But it is what it is. All right, so that concludes what we have been playing for this week. We're going to go ahead and we're going to jump right into our best and worst games of 2018. So first and foremost, I'm going to go to everybody on the panel and ask them to list the top 3 games they loved the most this year. So I know we all had a chance to play a lot of games. I believe, however, that Mr. Lugo maybe played way more stuff than us, if I had to make a guess. And Tony's probably second on the list. So, Mr. Lugo, how about you start us off and let us know what your top 3 best games in 2018 are?
I would probably have to say my number 1 has to be God of War. I think a lot of people would probably say the same thing. It won Game of the Year at the Game Awards recently for many different reasons. It was again fantastic game that a lot of people really enjoyed, myself included. Not even just as a reboot of God of War, but just as a solid game in general. Like, it was just that good, and I felt like it was really interesting. It was something that we knew and something that we were very familiar with. Being Kratos from God of War, that original series, and just presenting it to us in a different light and making it even better without compromising what came beforehand. And I really appreciated that, and I thought that was good. Another one I want to give a shout out to, Ni no Kuni 2. Ni no Kuni 2 I thought was a dope game. I still enjoyed it. A lot of people have their criticisms, myself included, but I still thought it was a very, very cool game overall. And I thought it was a lot of fun to play through, even though, granted, it's long, has a lot of different stuff happening with it. It's still a good JRPG. Again, if you want a fun, interesting, kind of like a different take on a JRPG that doesn't involve high school kids and a whole bunch of other stuff, or any of the other RPGs that might have come out throughout the year, it was definitely something that was still fun and still very, cool to get into. and stuff. And then finally, I guess I could say like probably my other one that I guess I want to mention is obviously Super Smash Brothers Ultimate. I still think that's a a fantastic release, a fantastic game to have on the Nintendo Switch. It's very meaty. It's going to offer a lot. It offers a lot of time, playing, offline, online, as well as also, again, with friends or not, or solo. There's, again, everybody loves Smash, and there's a reason for that because it's just fun to dive into. It's quick to get into, and it's just very interesting to play. There's a lot of other games I know for a fact that I loved throughout this year that I'm like completely forgetting. Keep in mind, there was a lot that came out this year, but if I had to choose three, those would probably be the three that I'd say like really, really stood out to me this year.
I say those are awesome picks all around. Yeah, definitely. Okay, how about you, Mr. Tony Polanco? What were your top three of 2018?
Yeah, it's kind of interesting because like God of War and Spider-Man are actually not in my top three as it is for a lot of people. And
Wow.
Number three and number two, respectively, are two games I didn't really have on my radar, but they just blew me away and ended up being there. So number three is Dragon Quest 11. I never played a Dragon Quest game before. I've heard about it and all that, but either I never had the systems or whatever, or the games never got ported over. So I never really played these games before, but I checked this one out, and it was like the video game. The best way I could describe it is like like a video game comfort food. Like it feels really good just playing it because and it's funny because like the story is something you've seen before. The characters are pretty much kind of generic, but the way it's done is just like I guess you could say it's like RPG perfection, and it's such a good, it makes you feel good because there's so many games out there that are just so like down and dour or whatever. Like this one just kind of warms your heart. I know that sounds corny to say, but that's the way I felt about it. And this year there were two other RJRPGs that I was really looking forward to, Ni no Kuni 2 and Octopath, and both of them in their own ways left me disappointed. But Dragon Quest, again, a game I had absolutely nothing to look for, like no, I wasn't really looking forward to, just like blew me away with the combat and all this, the way it was put together. And even now, actually, we were talking about the games we were playing, before. I actually did jump into it a little bit because I wanted to see if I could try to get the last couple of trophies for that. But yeah, it's a really good game, and I'm glad that it's selling well because I believe that means we'll probably get Dragon Quest 12. I don't know when that'll be, obviously, because these games take forever. But yeah, that game was really good. Number two game, and this is another surprise for me, was Monster Hunter World. This is a series I never liked. I openly been hostile to Monster Hunter games because of how, like, not only were they like just bad looking because they were on like handheld consoles or whatever, still using the same PS2 models or whatever, but like just the combat and all that felt clunky. The going through different levels just didn't feel right. But this one, like, it has everything. Not only are the controls really tight, but like the world feels so alive. Like you go from zone to zone, everything's interconnected. The monsters behave more like animals. It's really cool. Like I love when you're hunting one monster and another one just jumps into the fray. It's like, what the fuck? And then for me, because I'm not really like a multiplayer type of guy, right? I played most of this game either with my friends or with random people. It's just so much fun to get in there, just hunt monsters with your friends and stuff. And I also love how Capcom is always updating with new features. Like, this is the reason I keep coming back to this game. There's always something new to play. Even like if a couple of months pass, you're going to get something good eventually. Like, even right now they have the winter DLC going on, so I'm checking that out. It's just a lot of fun. I'm looking forward to seeing what they do eventually. I know they got a huge expansion next year. That should be nuts, man. But yeah, that's my number two. And then number one, this should come as no surprise, Red Dead Redemption 2. Like, I got a little bit of heat for this, but I do feel, for me personally, it's my game of the generation. Like, this generation to me has been okay. Like, last year it definitely got better, but I kind of have mostly written off this generation. I don't feel it's been as good as other ones, but this game kind of reminded me of why I fell in love with video games in the first place, and also reminds me of why Rockstar does open world games better than everybody. Like, the world feels alive. Like, it feels like right now I'm not playing it, but it still feels like that world is going on its own, independent of my actions. The story is great. The characters are really well written. I was surprised because one of my worries was I didn't know if Arthur Morgan would like resonate with me the way John Marston did from the first game. I find him a better character, which is crazy because I love John Marston, but Arthur Morgan, I'm not gonna get into what happens with him, but there's a lot of stuff in there that really like speaks to me as a person, so fucking good, man. Then, the combat, I know some people say, oh, the combat's clunky or whatever. I don't really feel that way. Rockstar has a very particular way of doing controls and stuff. And if you're used to those, like if you're used to GTA 5, you're going to be fine with this, but yeah, for me, it's all about the world and the characters and just how alive everything is, man. That game just like stuns the hell out of me. I know people talk about all these other games, but to me, that's the number one game of 2018 and the entire generation. So yeah, that's my three games of 2018.
Once again, some great picks there. Yes. Okay, Gary, I'm going to go to you next. And I would like to remind you that you cannot nominate Overwatch in this category. So what were your top three games of this year?
Oh, I can't say Overwatch. Damn. Okay. So yeah. I'm gonna go from mine are in order, so I'm gonna go from number three to number one. So uh, I would say God of War is number three for me. Now I did have my gripes with it, of course. And that's why it's number three. But I had to put it on the list because it is phenomenal in from a technical standpoint. The graphics are amazing for a console game, and from a technical aspect, like is mechanically amazing. I love what they did with it visually, and how they went from the previous God of War series on PlayStation 3 to the one we have now on PS4, and how they just overhauled the entire combat system and made it work and made it feel very fluid and a lot more skill based, a lot more timing based and things like that. Like they did a lot of great work on it to revamp it and repackage it into something new for this generation. And that's definitely recognized by me, even though I have my gripes with the story itself. Because in my opinion, I feel like for a God of War game, that it didn't give us enough of what we need in terms of fighting gods, and it felt like there was too much setup for the next game, and that's really what I didn't like about it, and I was quite disappointed about that. But it's still a great game, so I have to give them their just due, and that is my number three on the list. My number two is Dragon Quest 11. And like Tony, I hadn't ever played like another Dragon Quest before. I can't remember if Tony said he's never played one, but I wasn't. This game wasn't on my radar, just like Tony. And I looked out for it just because it is Square Enix, and I have a lot of respect for the company, and I like to see them succeed. And there's not going to be another Final Fantasy for a while, so I was like, you know what? I'm gonna play Dragon Quest because I want to, get back into some JRPGs. And everyone who got the game early kept telling me that, how great the game was. And so I was like, yeah, I'm definitely gonna get this. And I was not disappointed when I got it. It's definitely a different tone than what I'm used to in JRPGs. Like it's more of a cheerful, kind of positive, happy, fun kind of game. Story wise, but that doesn't take anything away from it. Like visually, it's beautiful. I love the art style. You could look at it as somewhat bare bones in some aspects, but like many JRPGs, it does get more complicated as you spend more hours in the game. Like there's new mechanics that are introduced as you go along, as you put more hours into it, and that's always rewarding when you're playing a game for hours and it's still throwing new concepts and ideas at you. But in the beginning, it's very bare bones, and I wasn't quite sure about it at that stage. But once I got more into it, it just completely sucked me in. So definitely a great RPG, and I feel like it's one of the most underrated games of this year as well. So definitely my number two. My number one. And this is actually another game that wasn't highly on my radar. Like I knew I was going to get it eventually, but Red Dead Redemption 2. Now, the reason it wasn't high on my radar is because I played the first game. I appreciated what it was doing, but I got very bored of it after a while, But this one, it completely immersed me throughout the entire experience. I really got into the feeling of being a cowboy, and it put me into that setting and that climate nicely. I think I love Rockstar's visual style, like how they present things. It feels very movie like. They're going for that more cinematic experience. Sometimes the gameplay mechanics suffer because of that, but because I heard a lot of people talking about how the shooting mechanics aren't polished, and sometimes that's a bit of an issue, but it didn't take away from my enjoyment of the game at all. And I feel like they did a great job with the story and the characters and the setting and everything. And like Tony was alluding to, there's something that happens with Arthur that I really appreciated. It's hard to kind of like explain that without spoiling it, but just the way the character is represented at a certain point, I really was intrigued by it, and it's something we don't see a lot in games, so yeah, we definitely need to have that spoiler discussion about the game so that we can dive more deeper into that. But yeah, that game surprised me, and it's definitely amazing, and hands down, it's the best game I played this year. So Red Dead Redemption 2 is my number one. My runners up are Monster Hunter World and Spider-Man. But yeah, that's it for me.
Sounds good. And I'm very proud of you, Gary. And Overwatch was not on that list, so I have to give you a round of applause.
Yeah, well, it was hard not to go into a tangent and talk about Overwatch, but I had to make sure I stayed on course.
Oh yeah, totally understand that. So my list is going to be a little different. Um, you mentioned honorable mentions. That I would just say there's a lot of great games I played this year, but in terms of the ones that I've enjoyed the most, this is definitely going to be a little different from you guys' list. So number 3 on my list um, is this game called Detroit Become Human. Yes, now I do understand that this was one of those games that was a little controversial because of certain stuff that was supposedly happening with the devs and at the studio. But aside from all of that, and whether or not all of that actually happened, the game itself I thought was pretty good. Um, while I did enjoy Spider-Man, I enjoyed this a little bit more because I appreciated the messages that they were trying to tell, and then of course all of the multiple decisions and certain choices that could happen as you're playing the game. I appreciated that attention to detail in regards to the storytelling, because it made you feel like if you did something different, you was truly going to have a different outcome. So it definitely looked fantastic. Also, I would say, um, but yeah, I have to say it's still number 3 on my list. I wouldn't put it number 1 because there's a couple other things that I think are a little bit higher than that. So number 3 I give to Detroit Become Human. Number 2 I give to Forza Horizon 4. Now, if you know me, Forza Horizon is a series that I'm heavily into. I would give a shout out to Mr. Eddie V because he is the one that got me into this series. So when I actually saw the game at E3, I was impressed. The only complaint that I had about Forza Horizon 3 was that I didn't really feel they really focused on the dynamic weather the way that I wanted them to. So when they revealed that Forza Horizon 4 was going to have seasons in it, I was like, oh, this is going to be fantastic. And pretty much what I played of Forza Horizon 4 so far has been fantastic. Yeah, I'm not going to say that it's the perfect game, but it by far, hands down, and no offense to anybody that has an Xbox One or is an Xbox owner, this is the best Xbox exclusive of 2018, no doubt about it. No offense to Sea of Thieves or State of Decay 2, but this is the game. I understand that racing is not necessarily a genre that everybody is into, but if you definitely are a racing game fan, you absolutely positively need to play this game if you haven't done so already. So Very excited to see what Playground Games does in the future. I know they're currently working on another game. Have no idea when we're going to actually see that game, but Forza Horizon 4 was a blast. Still playing it to this very day, and definitely highly recommended, in my personal opinion. And my number one game, this is going to surprise some people. All right. And when I say it's number one, in my personal opinion, it truly is the best game I played this year. It's a game called A Way Out. Now, if you've ever seen this game, you know when EA first revealed it, the concept is it's a co-op game, but it has split screen, and you can also play it locally. So I didn't really, when I saw the game, and of course, the guy behind the game, he had a very famous incident at the Video Game Awards last year. I must admit, when I saw how he acted at the show, I was like, I really want to check out this game that he was working on. So I went into this game completely blind. I had a chance to play it with our very good friend Adam Vale from Throwdown and WrestleCast. We played it through from beginning to end, and I absolutely love the game. Not just the fact that it's a fantastic co-op game, but the storyline takes a very dramatic twist once you get towards the end. And again, I'm not going to spoil it for anybody because I really do think that you need to experience it to really understand why it's a great game. But really, the way that they made that twist in the end, it is an emotional gut punch for so many reasons. But I just feel that they handled the game so well. And again, this is an independent studio. They are working on another title now, but hands down, I think this is a game that should have got more attention this year because it definitely deserves it. So without question, that is my best game of 2018, and it's not even close. Like I said, I played a lot of games. God of War, I unfortunately haven't finished God of War. Red Dead Redemption 2, another game I have yet to finish, only because I've been playing so many games and I haven't really had too much time because, other stuff does happen in life that takes away some time. But I do intend to go back to these games because I know God of War certainly deserves, what I played of God of War so far is fantastic. So I think that deserves all the recognition that it has gotten. And for Red Dead Redemption 2, the same thing. So I definitely need to finish those. Hopefully I can make that a priority once we have this little break over the holidays. But yeah. So I believe that pretty much covers our best games of 2018. So now we need to address the biggest disappointment of 2018. Very curious to hear what's going to be said about this. So I'm going to go to you first, Mr. Lugo. Which game disappointed you the most in 2018?
Without question, it's The Quiet Man. That's to me is the worst game of 2018 it's probably the worst game I played in a while. And I don't say that lightly because, I was surprised at how bad it actually was. When you have a game that's trying to be more artsy than an actual game, there's a huge problem. And that really goes down to a lot of the planning and the pre-production phase more than anything else. And I felt a little bit bad by the time I finished playing through The Quiet Man. I played it about 3 times in total. To go through the entirety of the game. You only have to really play it twice, but the problem was that there was so many bugs and stuff my second time around. I had to play it a third time just to get the final ending, which is like this whole other song and dance about, extra DLC to actually reveal like what exactly is going on with the story. It's a whole big what to do. Bottom line, it's the worst game of this year because it fundamentally just wants to get away from being a video game so much that it wants to cross over to film and art. And I think that's like a completely terrible decision for everybody that was working on this game. Like I said, I felt very bad for all the actors and actresses that were involved with it because it blends the game action with real life action, which a lot of the game models are based on the real life actors, but it's just all over the place. So that's hands down my worst game I've ever played this year.
Totally understand that. Yeah, I know a lot of people didn't like this game, so that's cool. How about you, Mr. Polanco? What was your most disappointing game of 2018?
Yeah, I'm gonna just piggyback off of JJ because it was definitely The Quiet Man. Now here's the thing about this game: I didn't even know this thing existed until I guess it was during Comic-Con. I was invited to actually interview the developers of the game, right? One of them was actually Joe Kelly, who was a very famous and very excellent comic book writer, right? So I went in there and I interviewed him, and I thought the concept was interesting, right? You got a protagonist that's deaf, and he interacts with the world differently, right? So I'm like, just hearing, just based off what they said, I'm like, this is going to be a pretty interesting game. And then in my mind, I'm like, okay, Square Enix already did a very good job when it comes to a quote unquote indie game with Life is Strange. So I figured, okay, this would be more the same. No, it wasn't. Like everything they tried to do just did not work right. Like their interpretation of being deaf is literally just muting the volume. Like what? That's stupid. And I'm just being real right now, right? Because I know a good deal of deaf people throughout my life, right? They use a lot of sign language because obviously that's the way they communicate. There's barely any sign language in this game. Like the main dude just stands there looking all like mopey and shit. I'm like, yo, my man, do some fucking sign language. And then the other thing is like, because sometimes the game has subtitles to let you know what's happening. But I'm like, okay, if this guy's really good at reading lips, right? I'm like, why can't you see what what I'm saying, what he interprets or whatever on the bottom of the screen? It's just really dumb. And I wrote this in my review. I'm like, I have to question whether any deaf people were even brought into this project as consultants. I'm like, you guys are interpreting it all wrong. And then yeah, like Jay, you said that the combination of like gameplay and cinema didn't really work out right. Gameplay, I call it Streets of Rage done wrong. It's just really bad beat 'em up controls and stuff, very clunky. The game does a horrible job of explaining the controls. So it wasn't until I almost beat the game that I realized this dude has like a super move. I'm like, okay. And then I'm not going to spoil anything, obviously, but there's some weird kind of supernaturalist shit that comes out of nowhere. I'm like, what? What the fuck is this shit? And then after you beat the game, you could actually like unlock the voices or whatever. But hearing the cheesy ass dialogue makes me want to mute it on myself. I'm like, no, turn that shit off. I don't need to hear all this. So yeah, it's sad. Like I know I see what these guys are trying to do, but it just did not work out right. And to me, because there's not a lot of Japanese indie games that are really like high profile the way Western indie games are. And to me, this game kind of sets it back if there even is that type of movement. I don't know if there is or not, but it's just a horrible, horrible game. Like this was one of those like reviews I dreaded writing because I don't really like to, dog on games like that. Like in written form, I try to find the good. I couldn't do it with this one. It was just terrible, So yeah, that's easily the worst game of the year for me.
Yeah, I totally understand that. Absolutely. Okay, Gary, what is your pick for the worst game of 2018?
Okay, so I didn't actually play this, but this is biggest disappointment, and I can still, I'm still disappointed even though I didn't actually play it. But it has to be Fallout 76 for me because I really, really loved Fallout 4. I mean, Fallout 3 is, one of my favorite, games of all time, but Fallout 4 did a great job. I actually liked the survival elements and the building and, all that stuff. And now I would prefer, just a new Fallout single player game, but I was open to the idea of a multiplayer Fallout game as well, especially when Todd Howard came out at E3 and gave that amazing presentation. He really hyped up the game and definitely oversold it, but the way he explained it made it seem like it's going to be Fallout 4, but it's going to be online and it's going to be kind of like a Destiny kind of thing where it's always online and you can do certain things together with your friends, but then you can also participate in solo missions and things like that. So I've watched a lot of videos, a lot of streams, and I've listened to a lot of podcasts of people's reaction to the game. And based on everything I heard and saw, I am fully disappointed. And it's sad that they did this with such a respected IP. And I hope that it doesn't impact the future outlook on this IP, on this series. But yeah, they definitely did a terrible job of it, and they made it seem like they when Todd Howard gave that presentation, I'm guessing they were very early into development still, and they were still working things out. So they promised things that they didn't deliver on when the game came out, and it seemed like they realized that they wasn't going to be able to deliver, and they try to do, you know, as much damage control as possible beforehand, and you know that's really dishonest from a studio, especially one as big as Bethesda and one who's built their legacy off of, you know, some phenomenal IPs. So that was a huge disappointment for me, and it represents everything I hate about gaming currently. Like, just the fact that these big companies are allowed to, you know, take advantage of people who are big fans of these series, you know, and then, you know, just continue to milk money from them, you know, based off of the you know, the names of these games and everything. You know, they make these decisions to, you know, just create new versions of the game, and then it doesn't turn out to be what you're expecting. And you know, I just hate that companies are allowed to do that. The same thing happened last year with you know, EA and Battlefront. So this year it was Fallout 76. I'm wondering what it's going to be next year, but I'll talk more about that later. So yeah, Fallout 76 is the biggest disappointment for me.
Sounds good. Yep. I believe that's going to be disappointing for a lot of people. But we'll see what happens with that game moving forward. As for my pick, okay, this is hard because a lot of the games I played, they weren't like, I can't think of anything that I thought was the worst, but I could definitely say one that I thought was very disappointing, or at least most disappointing to me personally, and that's Darksiders 3. You know, I know when THQ Nordic picked up this license, I was very excited for this game because, I mean, this is a franchise that I got into with the first and the second game. And obviously, learning more about the third game, I was intrigued because the storyline is basically that Fury has to deal with the 7 deadly sins. And those basically are portrayed as 7 different creatures she has to face. So just to me alone, that concept sounded fantastic. But once I had a chance to actually play the game, you know, the hack and slash combat is great, but it's just that the game, there are a lot of aspects of it that feel unpolished, at least to me when I played on console. I'm not sure if on PC the same issues were persistent, but I know that, yeah, there was issues with polish, there were some technical glitches in there, and then, of course, on top of all that, the story started off strong, but then it got disappointing towards the end. Now, I will say, at the very least, I do want to give THQ Nordic credit for bringing it back. You know, at least I think they did a decent enough job, whereas if they are able to do another sequel, it could be great. But I have to say, for what I was expecting from the game, in terms of the aesthetic look of the characters, the gameplay and stuff like that, certain things I think they probably could have waited to release this at a later time. Plus, they also made the decision of releasing this in November after Red Dead and everything else had dropped. So there was a number of games that came out in November, including Fallout 76. So I think if they would have held it maybe until the beginning of next year, that might have been good. But as we'll get into later, yeah, there's a lot of other big titles coming out at the start of next year. So maybe that's why they did decide not to go that route. But that definitely, for me personally, is my most disappointing. Doesn't mean that it's a bad game. It's just that it needs to be refined. A couple patch updates, maybe they'll fix a lot of things that they have in the game. But definitely, by far, disappointing to me in 2018. So that concludes our biggest disappointment for the year. Now we're going to jump ship and we're going to talk about 2019. And we're going to give our picks on 3 games we're looking forward to in 2019. So once again, I'm going to start off with you first, Mr. Lugo. What are the 3 games you're looking forward to most in the upcoming new year?
Well, this is a little bit hard, you know, in some cases, because there's a lot of big ones that are dropping next year, especially early on in the year. But for me, obviously, if you guys know me, if you guys have been following the site for a while, you guys know I'm a big Kingdom Hearts fan. So Kingdom Hearts 3 is obviously my most anticipated, that the start of next year, you know, is coming very, very soon. We're under a month from this game dropping, which is crazy because people like me have been waiting for this game for over 10 years, you know, for one reason or another. And it's been insane the level of like, all the chaotic stuff that's happened in the gaming news and all the stuff that's, building up the hype for this game, between the leaks that happened a couple weeks ago, between all the stuff that's happening in the various different Disney parks and all the commercials and stuff that's coming out. This is going to be a very big game. Now, will it live up to the hype? I don't know. There's no way to tell for certain, but that is definitely myself and everybody else's most anticipated game of next year, hands down, without question. Besides that, though, if we're getting away from Kingdom Hearts 3 and looking at more of some of the other game releases that are coming out, one of my biggest ones I'm also really excited for because I played it and I really enjoyed what I played, Resident Evil 2 Remake. The thing is that I'm not a huge diehard Resident Evil fan, but I really enjoyed playing that game at E3. It was surprisingly really cool to play that because it reminded me of like a blending of the atmosphere and the horror type of vibe that you get from a Resident Evil 1 or 2, which in this case being Resident Evil 2, and the gameplay and the feel of the controls of Resident Evil 4. And to me, that's a perfect blend because people want that classic style horror that Resident Evil is usually known for, that survival horror, but they still want it to feel really good to play like most of the modern games of this era. And I think that's what they've got so far is pretty damn cool. And so far it seems to be working out very well for them. So I can't wait to see how that's going to turn out. And then finally, if I had to really choose one more as like my most anticipated, again, there's like so many big games that are coming out next year. It's absolutely insane. I would have to say Mortal Kombat 11. I'm a very big Mortal Kombat fan. You guys know that. I think you even know that too, Rich. Again, we've talked a couple times about Mortal Kombat or Injustice and stuff. And I think NetherRealms does a fantastic job in all their games. The last couple games they put out have been just awesome, especially with DLC and extra content. I can't wait to see if they're going to take that same formula and same approach that they did with Injustice 2, with everything how that game turned out, especially with the extra content, the DLC, and how that's going to translate to the Mortal Kombat universe. I think there's a lot of good things up ahead. And if a lot of the rumors that have been floating around are true, this game's going to be really freaking cool. So I can't wait to see that come together. Remember, there's a reveal event for that game coming next month. Yeah, I believe it's January 17th, if I'm not mistaken. It's like early on in the month. So that's going to be pretty damn interesting to see how that turns out. So those are my 3 picks for 2018 or 2019. I'm sorry.
Yeah, those are solid picks. And I agree with everything you had to say. Yeah, there is a reveal event. That's on the 17th. So looking forward to hearing more about Mortal Kombat 11 for sure next month. Yeah. So I'm going to go to you next, Mr. Polanco. What are your top 3 most anticipated games of 2019?
Yeah, I'm looking over at the list of games coming out next year, and to be honest, I'm not really excited for a lot of these. So it's a little, I don't know, man. And I felt this way for months. I'm like, what's coming out next year? So the fact that my number 1 game I'm most anticipating is a remake should tell you something. But yeah, my number 1 game I'm most looking forward to is Resident Evil 2 Remake. And it's funny because, don't get me wrong, I love Resident Evil 2 and all that. But to me, I feel there are other better Resident Evil games, specifically Resident Evil Code Veronica, for talking about that specific style. But this is in the vein of Resident Evil 4, which is, to me, the best of the best. So I'm glad for that. I played it at E3. And also played another demo at New York Comic Con. Both, one as Jill, and the other, not Jill, what's her face, Claire, and the other one is Leon. Really good stuff. I love how they've taken the base game and just remade it like a true remake. So I'm really looking forward to that. Another one that I feel a lot of people aren't talking about a lot is Control, Remedy's game, which is basically like Quantum Break with like a woman, but crazier. I was really surprised. That was one of the genuine E3 surprises for me last year. So I'm really looking forward to that. That's going to be really dope. And then this game, I think it's coming out next year. And I'm pretty sure you JJ could jump in on this too. Bloodstained. We've been playing this forever.
True, very true.
The demos, 3 years in a row now, so I'm really glad this is hopefully finally coming out. And I don't think this is going to be one of those Kickstarter disappointing stories. I think this is going to be like one that's going to really come through. Igarashi, you could tell this guy is very meticulous. Every time I've played this game, he's always been in the room with us, checking us out, asking us questions. This is going to be a really special game. If you're really into no, and it's funny because I'm actually at the point where I'm sick of Metroidvania games because there's just so many, but this is the one that is really going to bring it home for me, man. I can't wait. And also a little bit of a weird shout out because I didn't really like the first game, but I kind of have to give an honorable mention Rich to a Division 2. You know, I feel that
Wow.
game. Yeah, yeah.
That's very shocking.
Yeah, we can't. I can't go too much into it, as neither can you. But I think I'm keeping an eye out for it. Based on what I played, I'm keeping an eye on that game for next year. But we could tell you more about that game, what we think, in the middle of January. I mean, I'm going to say the exact date, but in the middle of January, we could tell you guys more about it. But I have it on my radar now, which is interesting. I didn't have it at all on my radar before, you know. But yeah, those are my main 3 games I'm looking forward to next year.
Yeah, that's very interesting. I definitely wasn't expecting that. So, hey, that's good. Nice surprises, I say. Okay, so how about you, Gary? Which 3 games are you looking forward to in 2019? And let me also remind you right now, no, we're not getting Overwatch 2 in 2019. So I hope that Overwatch is not on this list.
Nah, it's not on the list, but I am looking forward to Overwatch League season 2. That's gonna be great. But nah, yeah. So I mean, there's not a lot that I'm looking forward to, but there's a few games I'll mention. Now, Kingdom Hearts 3. You know, I'm not the biggest Kingdom Hearts fan, but you know, I do support Square Enix, and I've played some of the first Kingdom Hearts, and I can understand the appeal of it. I hear that it's a very complex and convoluted story throughout, you know, Kingdom Hearts 1 and 2, and then all the spin off games as well. And I don't think I'm going to have enough time to get through all of that stuff. I hear it's a lot of hours. But, you know, I am looking forward to just picking up Kingdom Hearts 3 and just making sense of whatever I can and just experiencing all these different characters. Like, I like the idea of it being a mashup of, you know, different characters from Disney and Square Enix, Final Fantasy, and things like that. So, looking forward to seeing what that's all about and, you know, how that's going to be received. So that's one of them. Division 2 also, you know, which Tony just mentioned. I know you guys got to go to the event and everything, and you can't say too much, but I actually enjoyed the first game, you know, the main story anyway, like the main campaign. After the campaign, there wasn't really much to do, so I hope they expand on that so that there's more stuff to enjoy after you actually finish the main campaign. But the first game was really fun while it lasted. Like, I played it with some, you know, a few of the Koalition heads, like James and Alicia, and also shouts to Assad as well. Played with him sometimes, so it's a very, you know, it's one of those online games I really liked. I really enjoyed. It didn't, you know, it wasn't the same as Destiny, but it came close somewhat. So I'm looking forward to see what they do with the second one. And the third game I'll mention is this is more out of curiosity just to see how it turns out, and that's Shenmue 3, because, you know, there's a lot of history behind this game. I did buy the remaster of Shenmue 1 and 2, you know, and yeah, like, I want to see if Ryu finally finds Lan Di. So definitely looking forward to seeing how that turns out and what the response is. And hopefully it turns out good, and, you know, it's actually well received and everything, and people love it and enjoy it and are happy about it, and maybe they'll even make, you know, more games after that one. So we'll wait and see. But that's pretty much it from me.
Some pretty good picks, and you definitely surprised me with that last one as well. So we'll see.
Yeah, it's more curiosity, to be honest.
Oh yeah, I totally understand. Yeah, I totally understand. So my 3 picks. First and foremost, I think number 1, without question, it is Mortal Kombat 11. That reveal at the Video Game Awards really got me. They got me excited. I loved everything about how they presented it, with Ed Boon coming out on stage to present an award, and then all of a sudden you see the screen flash and you see Scorpion Spear. Yeah, that's awesome. I'm looking forward to it. I can't wait for that reveal event on the 17th so we can find out more information about what to expect in this sequel. So that's number 1. Number 2, without question, I believe it is Resident Evil 2. because you know, as I believe Tony and JJ said, yeah, they also looking forward to Resident Evil 2. That actually was one of the I mean, I did play the original Resident Evil, but that Resident Evil 2 game when it first came out way back in the day, that was one of my favorite games for that particular time. So I'm curious to see how they handled the remake. I did not get a chance to play it at E3, but looking forward to it. And side note, it actually comes out a day before my birthday, so I definitely do plan to play that on my birthday next month. So definitely looking forward to that. And the third game, and this may surprise some people, but then again, it might not. I have to say Devil May Cry 5. Because now I will say this, before I had a chance to actually play the demo, I probably wouldn't have said Devil May Cry 5. But I did play that demo on Xbox One, and the way they put together the demo, very straightforward action. I mean, I really enjoyed that, even though it was a short demo. So I absolutely intend to check out the final game when it comes out in March to see what it has to offer. But yeah, I mean, I did, you know, play around with a few of the games in the series, but I never really played through them to the fullest completion. So I may have to go back and do that for the sake of storyline purposes to understand what's going on. But I definitely intend to make time to play Devil May Cry 5 when it drops in March next year. So those are essentially our top 3 games we're looking forward to in 2019. And now we're going to finish off by talking about one game that we are worried about in 2019. So I'm actually going to go to you first, Mr. Lugo. Let us know which game you are most concerned about heading into 2019.
I would have to say, again, I'm looking over the list of like games that are confirmed for next year. Cause again, it's a little bit harder, you know, trying to remember all the games that have came out that I've seen at like places like E3 and other events. And if I had to choose one, like, you know, specific one, I would have to say it's that Team Sonic racing game from Sega. And funny enough, the reason being is because when I looked at it, I actually got to play it when I was at E3. I got to play it a couple times, a couple races. And while I enjoy the Sonic or Sega Genesis, not Sega Genesis, but like Sega character racers, specifically with Sonic and Sega All-Stars Racing Transformed, I felt that was the best version of that. This one is just focusing on Sonic characters specifically. And they're getting rid of that transformation type of stuff, but it's also implementing a whole team type of aspect into the racing. And while that sounds interesting at first, in practice, it's not so much. And, you know, again, removing all those extra Sega characters, which I think added a lot of charm to that style of game, is really, I feel like is really going to kind of make this one feel like a dud when it comes out. At least that's what I'm thinking at the first, you know, first glance, first impression. You know, they could be doing a whole bunch of other work on the game and things will totally change up like that. But if I really had to pick one game that has me a little bit worried on any sort of level, because a lot of the games that I'm really paying attention to that are coming out next year all look like they're going to be really big hits, or at least games that are super popular like that. But that'll probably be the one game I would say is the one that has me the most kind of like, you know, a little bit cautious when it comes to playing it.
I say, yeah, that's a good pick. Definitely. Okay, we're going to go to you next, Mr. Polanco. Although I think I may know which game is on your list, but I'm curious to know which game are you most worried about 2019?
Yeah, you and I have had this conversation. You already know what I'm going to say. I'm really, really worried about Anthem, man. Like, to me, if this game bombs, I think that's it, man. I think that's it for BioWare. You know, we know how ruthless EA is when it comes to studios that underperform, and I don't think BioWare is immune for that. I really think, not to get too off topic, but I really think that announcement of Dragon Age was them going, hey, guys, we still have something you actually want to play. Please. We're still
not
going
anywhere. For the record, I couldn't even tell that was a Dragon Age game. When I first saw it, I had to ask somebody if that was the Dragon Age game.
Yeah, you're right about that, but I really think they threw that there like, hey, guys, if you don't care about Anthem, we still got Dragon Age, because BioWare, they're known for being a studio that produces highly cinematic, story-driven games, and Anthem looks like it's, let's just be honest here. It looks like they're trying to jump on the Destiny bandwagon, right? That it looks like Destiny with mechs, you know, and I don't think that's going to fly. I know, they claim that it's going to have the same quality of a regular BioWare game, and I know the main team is working on this. Unlike Andromeda, they had the B team, but I really fear that if this game doesn't live up to whatever it is that Bioware says it is. It's funny, they've been talking so much about this game, and I still don't really know what this game's about. But I really think if this game underperforms, we may see the end of Bioware, which scares me. And again, I know that sounds crazy, but think about how many studios EA has killed. You know, like you wouldn't have thought they were going to close on Visceral. Look what happened, you know, so we'll have to see about that. But I can't be here saying, oh, guys, you need to support this game because we got to keep Bioware around. Like, no, if the game's bad, don't buy it. You know, I'm not saying it is going to be bad. I just don't. I think this game's veering too far off what made Bioware. And I'm worried that if it underperforms, that's the end of the studio. But we'll see. But yeah, that's the game I'm most worried about. I mean, not only for the game, but for the company too, you know.
I certainly agree. We will see what happens, but I will say that I do hope that Destiny 3 does great when it drops next year. We'll see.
Wow, that's hilarious.
Yeah, because I hear people kept talking about, hey, this looks like Destiny. Yeah, as soon as they saw the video, so I said, okay, we'll see. But Gary, what is your pick for which game you think is going to be most disappointing next year?
Yeah, I'm gonna have to echo Tony here. Anthem, man. Like, I'm scared for BioWare and their legacy because they have some of my most favorite games ever made. Like they created it. And you know their reputation is heavily dependent on Anthem right now. You know they already had a bomb last year with Mass Effect Andromeda. So I'm hoping that you know they Anthem is a success, and you know it brings them back to their former glory, and you know from there they're able to go on to create you know new iterations of Mass Effect and Dragon Age and the games we love. But yeah, I mean I don't know, man, like because I haven't seen anything at all that's really sold me on that game. And that worries me the most because it's coming out very soon now. Like it's not that far away. And I feel like we should have been seeing something that's making us be like, oh my god, I can't wait for this game. And there hasn't really been anything like that. So that's very worrying. Now, I will say one thing. A couple of my friends played the alpha for that game, and they said that they wasn't disappointed. Like, they said it was actually fun, like, somewhat fun. So, you know, hopefully that means it's actually, you know, a good game and it exceeds our expectations for it. But I don't know. I mean, you know, that could have just been like the best part of the game that they played, and the rest of it is like terrible. Like, who knows? You know, like you can't really judge the entire game off of an alpha. But hopefully, you know, it's a success. But based on what we've seen this generation, and you know, their last game that they put out, yeah, I think that this could be a bomb, to be honest with you. So. That's my pick.
Yeah. Hey, listen, I fully agree with you and Tony about Anthem. We'll have to see how that turns out, but I know they're having another beta open to the public, I believe, next month. So we'll know whether or not this game is actually going to be worth something. We actually get a chance to check out the beta for a lengthy period of time. We'll see. As for my pick, in this might be somewhat controversial, but I have to take it here because I feel as though I've seen very little of this game. We've seen a good amount of it, but I still have no idea when this game is coming out, and apparently neither does Sony. So I have to say, Dreams. I do believe that Dreams is going to be disappointing. You know, I know Gary is in the UK. You know, his studio, Media Molecule, is also in the UK. So I'm not taking any shots at the UK. But this is one of several games that I have to have a lot of questions about what is going on with the development. I know they pretty much had this game used to introduce a lot of the games they showed at E3 in the past. At I believe it was E3. Yeah, the E3 show this past year, back in June, the Sony conference. They used the Dreams things to introduce the segments, but we haven't really seen any footage of what you can do with this game, unless that was something they showed a long time ago. I haven't seen anything recent. So I am a little concerned about that game because I know Little Big Planet was a pretty good franchise. You know, we have our very good friend Carl Daniel, who was a huge fan of that franchise. So we'll have to see what they do with Dreams. But I am concerned about that, as well as Shenmue, because I know you mentioned Shenmue 3 earlier, Gary. I am concerned about that because, again, when it takes these games so long for it to come out, you have to have a little bit of concern as to how it's going to turn out. We could say the same about Crackdown 3, but I think from the standpoint of what I really, really am puzzled on, it is Dreams right now because I haven't seen anything from Dreams, and I don't really know what to expect with that experience. But hopefully it isn't a failure, and if it is, then they can go back to the drawing board, maybe do another Little Big Planet or something else after this game. But we'll see. All right, so any final thoughts or things you guys want to mention before we get ready to wrap up today's show?
Yeah, I guess this is more of a question for you guys. Do you think that next year will be, like, I guess, the final year before we start getting new consoles? I predict new consoles are coming 2020. I don't think they're coming 2019. So do you think next year will be kind of, you know, in a sense, like the wrap up year before we start really going deep into, you know, discussing the new consoles, you know, PlayStation 5 and Xbox 2, I guess?
Yeah, I really believe so. And you know, Sony's actions seem to be alluding to that. Like I think they're acting like they're basically done with this generation already, and you know, they're just ready to move to the next one. So I think we'll get an announcement about the next PlayStation in 2019, and then the console will come out 2020. So I really think that will be 2019 will be the last year.
I kind of agree. And the only reason why I agree is not even because of Sony's actions with PSX, but even just because that Microsoft talked about their next console when we were at E3. That was like, it was one of those things that just came out kind of at surprises, like, oh, it's a little bold and open. And like, you know, nobody did not take notice. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I know that sounds like a double negative, but between even Sony not even showing up at E3 next year, which again is a whole nother deal that's kind of like discuss and dissect. But I think that next year we start getting announcements like reveals, like teases of what those consoles are going to be, followed by the following year, if not getting to see the consoles into eventual release towards the end of the year. I think that's fair to say, because wasn't that exactly how it played out almost at the end of the previous cycle when we got into this one, when we got to see PlayStation 4, Xbox One, and eventually Nintendo Switch? Like, I'm pretty sure it was kind of like that, not exactly per se, but I wouldn't be surprised if it was very similar.
Yeah, that's what I think. I don't think we're going to get any, maybe from Microsoft next year, but I'm not going to put that. But I think with PlayStation, they're going to do exactly what they did with PS4. They're going to announce the system the same year it comes out. So I think it'll be announced February 2020, you know, in their own show, right? A little bit more information at E3 when they make their return. And then that year, it'll actually come out, you know, 2020, November. That's what I think is going to happen.
You know, it's funny you say that, because I think it's also, we should know that there's still some big PlayStation 4 games that are coming down the pipeline that are actually still coming next year. Remember, we got The Last of Us Part 2. I mean, we got, what is it?
Days Gone.
Days Gone.
Ghost of Tsushima.
Ghost of Tsushima. That was the one I was thinking of. And then also keep in mind, even though a lot of people are saying that possibly this could be a next console type of game, I would still say Death Stranding is part of that conversation, because all those are big games like that have been announced or have been shown with PlayStation 4. Like, again, a lot of the branding association and stuff, more specifically those other games instead of Death Stranding. But I would still argue that Death Stranding is still part of that lineup of last hurrah for PlayStation 4 before whatever PlayStation 5 is going to be. But again, I'm with you on that sense where we start getting announcements / teases of what those consoles are going to be in 2019. I think 2019 is the year that we start to be like, okay, this generation is coming to an end. These are your last big games that you're going to get from us. But here's a look at towards the future for 2020. And I think 2020, towards the end of 2020 into 2021 is when you start to see those consoles.
Yeah, that's what I think too. That's exactly what I think. What about you, Rich? What's your assessment of you know, what's coming next year as far as new consoles and all that?
I pretty much think you guys nailed it on the head. I definitely think 2020 is when we'll probably see new consoles. A lot of those games coming in 2019. I know we still don't have some release dates, you know, but yeah, I'm pretty confident that a lot of them are coming in 2019. As for Death Stranding, um, I'm glad that that was mentioned because perhaps that should have been the game that I said is probably going to be disappointing because I know we haven't seen hardly any gameplay from that game. But I have to wait and see what's the story behind that because I'm pretty sure we're going to see a lot more of that in 2019. But yeah, I totally think that totally makes sense. Where there will probably be a lot of teasers next year. Although I will not rule out the fact that Microsoft may have something major at their conference, since they know that they'll have the only one. They are pretty much between Sony and Microsoft. They're the ones that's going to have a big show at E3. So I'm pretty sure that they will take advantage of that one way or another. I mean, they may not have any of these other games under these new studios completed yet, but they're definitely going to have something to show at E3. So I'm curious to know what that is. But yeah, 2019 for teasers, that sounds totally plausible. In 2019 for releases, for the actual console releases, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So we'll see what happens. Yeah. So, any final thoughts before we get ready to wrap up today's show?
I will say, like, this is like 2018 has been one of the years that kind of made me almost fall out of love with gaming, and I mean that just on like the mainstream level. Like, I didn't appreciate a lot of the the things the mainstream companies were doing, like EA, Activision. So I think there's a lot of messed up things going on, a lot of taking advantage of people like customers and things like that. So a lot of the practices made me not even want to bother with the AAA titles this year, and that's why I played only a handful of them really. And I hope that things improve in 2019 because I missed last generation when things were more about quality, and innovation and everything. And this generation has just all been about repackaging what we got last generation and selling it again, and just awful business practices. So I want to fall back in love with gaming. I hope that can happen next year because this year made me almost fall out of love with it, to be honest with you.
Damn, that's pretty heavy, dude. Shit.
Well, with all due respect, if unless Overwatch 2 is dropping in 2019, 2020, this may remain the same for you, Gary.
No, I think things will improve though, especially as we move to the next generation. But yeah, I didn't want to like bring things down like that, but yeah, this year, like, I don't know, it's like definitely not one of my favorite years in gaming.
Oh,
Yeah, just to quickly jump on that, like I don't agree with this year making me feel that way. It's next year that kind of makes me feel that way. You know what I'm saying? Like again, when we were talking about what games to looking forward to next year, I had a really hard time, and I've been thinking about this next month. I'm like for a few months, I'm like, I don't know, man. Like I think gaming until next generation is going to be kind of dry. It's going to be a little bit harder to get motivated to play these games. So I'm probably just going to hit the backlog. You know what I'm saying? But yeah, it's pretty interesting, Gary, that you felt about that this year, because I felt this year was pretty great. Not as great as last year, but it was pretty good. But it's next year I'm really worried about. And to be honest, most of 2020, there probably will not be a lot of crazy good games. I could be wrong about that, but usually when console generation started, you don't really get the best of the best, so that's going to be a little bit of a worry too. My hope is that we could at least play some of our old games on new systems, because right now they don't really have the excuse to not be backwards compatible. It's the same x86 architecture, so hopefully that'll be the case. Like Death Stranding, I think that's going to be a game you can play on both systems, but we'll see, what happens with the beginning. Hopefully things won't be as dry in 2020 when the new systems come out as they've usually been in the past.
Yeah. Yeah, I can see that. And what you said about last year being so great, I think that's a lot of the reason why this year was such a low for me. Because coming off of that year we had last year, you know, it was kind of hard to top that. So that's probably what made this year feel worse to me. But
You know, I'm going to have to go back and get a refresher as to what came out last year because I don't remember. But
so you had Near Automata, you had
oh yeah,
Persona
Her,
5.
oh
Horizon
yeah,
Zero Dawn,
Yeah.
Resident Evil
Breath of the
7,
Wilds,
yeah,
Breath of the
Breath of the
Wild.
Wild, Mario Odyssey.
oh yeah.
Last
You
year
know,
was ridiculous, man. So many games came
I
out,
told
you
you it
know?
was one of the best years in gaming because there was a big release every single month. That was what made
Yes.
2017 so good. In 2018, and I think obviously 2019 is it's going to be very hard for any of those years to live up to that. But I think it's still very hopeful. I still think that we got a lot of big games that are still coming that we both know about, or at least we have an idea of when they're going to be dropping, and others that are still like we're still waiting for them to kind of get made and stuff. Keep in mind, we still got things like Final Fantasy VII Remake, which again
Yeah.
is like far out, you know, that are really don't even have an idea if
Yeah,
they're
we'll
even
see
being
about that
completed
one.
or not. But
Yeah.
but you understand my point though. Like
Hmm.
it's still
Yeah.
a good thing to look forward to as far as like, you know, our industry is at least, you know, having a lot of good things happen for it, at least at the current moment.
Yeah, and there's little games out there like I'm really looking forward to Streets of Rage 4, the Panzer Dragoon remakes. I'm fucking excited for that. So there's still some stuff out there, but I think definitely things are gonna start winding down, you know, which is okay, you know, because last year was so many games you could barely keep up with them. You know, it was insane.
yeah, yeah. You're right about that. Make a very good point. We'll see. We'll see. So, any final thoughts before we get ready to wrap up the show?
I think that's it, man. You know, thank the fans as always. You know, you guys are always supporting us. You know, really, really appreciate that. You know, whether it be on our podcast, you know, our posts, our Twitters, or social media. I always appreciate the you know the support. That's one of the reasons I kind of keep going. Like, you know, on days that are kind of like shitty or whatever, you know, you get even like somebody just saying thank you. That's enough to keep you going, man. So, like eternal gratitude for the fans, man. You guys are fucking awesome.
Absolutely, I agree. And yes, thank you all for listening. Uh, 2018 was a very important year for the coalition, so looking forward to seeing all of the excellent things that are in the works for 2019 and beyond. But right now, we thank you for your continued support, and I'm now going to allow you guys to give shout outs. So, Mr. Lugo, how about you give your shout outs first?
Just shout out to everybody that checks out all the content, has been leaving comments, looking at all the stuff that we put up on the YouTube channel. Obviously, the Patreons as well. We appreciate you guys supporting us throughout the year, you know, throughout all the years that we've been around doing our stuff and really kind of working hard to give you guys great content on all the different gaming related stuff that comes out. We appreciate that. It means a lot to us. Hopefully, all of you guys out there have a good holiday, you know, have a good Christmas that's coming up in a couple days, actually, for us here in the United States. And everybody just get some good stuff underneath the tree and get some good food and drinks a lot of eggnog and the whole 9 yards. So hopefully you guys have a good time. I'm looking forward to it and you guys should be too. So thank you.
Absolutely. I agree. Mr. Tony Polanco, any shout outs that you would like to give?
Yeah, like I said, you know, shout out to the fans. But shout out to you guys, man. You know, it's great that, you know, we've been able to keep our friendships and all that going all these years, you know, supporting each other and all that. Really, really appreciative of all those relationships we've built because of gaming and all that. You know, it keeps us going, and it's really good. You know, some of the, especially the private conversations we have off Twitter, you know, those are always a lot of fun and all that. So I definitely want to thank all you guys for, you know, just being you guys and being fucking amazing, you know?
Oh, well, we appreciate that. Yes, we're going to definitely continue to allow these things to flourish for everybody, without question. And I want to give a shout out to Mr. Lugo and Tony for being on today. It's great to have you both on the show, as well as everybody on the staff that has done stuff, whether it, you know, in the past or present. We appreciate the continued support, and of course, all the fans as well that continue to support us. We do have some great things in the works for the new year, and I look forward to talking more about that in the new year. But Gary, now the floor is yours for shout outs.
Yeah, man. So big shouts to all of our Patreon supporters: M. Collins, Mauricio Aguilar, Himdil, Fergus Mills, Miguel, Antonio Rogers, and Sean Gority. You guys really are the reason. We keep going. You guys really do keep us going, keep us looking forward to the shows every week and everything. Like, we really appreciate all of the support. And big shouts to the entire Koalition staff as well. Even though I missed E3 this year, I'm glad I got to see a lot of you guys, on my trip to the Overwatch League. And yeah, big shouts to the Throwdown crew. Love that show. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Shouts to everyone here too, JJ, Rich, Tony. And let's make 2019 great.
Absolutely. I agree. So thank you all for listening. I hope you all have a very Merry Christmas and a prosperous New Year. And looking forward to talking to you all again in 2019.